My name is Geraint Thomas and I work for Amgen and I'm Director of Patient Affairs for Amgen. So there's lots of challenges, I think, in how we do this from different aspects of it. This is a huge multi-stakeholder complex environment that we work in, and the challenges therefore are at every step of the way, I think. I think if you start at the beginning and understanding what the patient needs are, I think it's sometimes very difficult for us to find those perspectives, to engage the right patient organizations or the right patients within those patient organizations. And how we do that, I think that's also quite a challenge. In Europe, we're not allowed as industry to interact directly with individual patients. However, we are allowed to work with and contact patient organizations. Therefore, it's now how you get that right, because there's only so many patient organizations. So capacity essentially is a huge challenge, I think. Companies have to be receptive and ready to act on what the information that they're receiving. And I know there's nothing more frustrating from a patient's perspective is that they come prepared, do something, and then we don't listen, or we don't go back to them and say, this is what we did when we heard from you, and this helped us to move on. So nothing ever changes, and then people get fed up and they don't come. And so I think that's a huge challenge as well. And then as you go along, as the medicine develops to the regulator, well, is the regulator ready to listen to endpoints that are being designed by a patient? Do they want something more hard, a harder measure? They need survival data for a medicine in oncology, for example. And if they haven't got that, well then, that's it. The medicine's not going to go develop any further. And yet, from a patient's perspective, maybe survival isn't the end thing. Maybe it's a quality of life aspect that's more important to them. So suddenly you've got a mismatch of what the patient's asking for, the unmet need, but what the regulator's saying is saying, no, from our perspective, it has to be survival. So that's potentially where there could be some challenge as well. And you take that on further, would society pay for this innovation? So, you take the journey, you listen to the patient, you define the studies, regulator finally says yes, and you get to the HTA groups and they say no, well, because there's small increment, therefore it's not worth paying for this small kind of change, therefore we're not giving this medicine reimbursement, despite that small change incrementally making a huge difference to the patient's quality of life. Again, if we've listened to what those patients want. We understand that we can't do things like we've always done. We have to listen to how society is changing, how expert patient voices are changing, and that has to be the view of all the different stakeholders. Regulators have to have that open mind. HTA people have to have that open mind as well for this all to work. Otherwise, there's only going to be certain parts and it'll all fall apart. There's lots of initiatives happening out there, and I think the role of PFMD is to coalesce and galvanize all these organizations and all these different initiatives together and navigate a path through them and help to build bridges between all these different stakeholders. So ultimately there's one sort of concept, one sort of overarching strategy that potentially could be adopted. For me, as an employee of Amgen, is to try and take some of these principles internally inside of Amgen, and we're committed at a senior level to change the way that we work and interact with patient organizations. So my first priority is to try and get my own piece of the jigsaw puzzle correct and trying to get Amgen into a place where they are genuinely listening to patients. Personal wish is for, I guess, for everybody to not forget why we're doing it, which I think is ultimately for the patient's needs, because we are in a place that we can do so much to help support patients if we get it right. So I think that's my first thing, and also to be resilient, because for sure there'll be some kind of hurdles in the way which we'll think, oh, why are we bothering? So therefore, if we are true to the patient, we can have to take them through this with them on the journey, and therefore no obstacle ultimately should be unsurmountable. We should be, as a collective, coming together to push ahead, really, I would say. So yeah.